Alright, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, we got a phenomenal individual for you guys tonight. He needs no introduction. He is the one, the only, the legendary Sir Mix-a-Lot. How are you doing this evening?
What's going on, man?
Oh, doing great, man, doing great. First and foremost, I gotta say quickly before we get into this, I've been a huge fan for a very, very long time. So just thank you so much for just giving myself and my audience your time, and of course, just everything you've done for the hip-hop music.
Oh, man, it's funny, man, because just now people are starting to realize that, I do a lot more than just do, songs. I've been in the game for a long time, full studio, all that stuff, so.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I'm gonna make sure during this interview we actually let people know, because I do know that you also had your own record label at one point. You know what I mean? You were a DJ back in the day as well, so you
Yeah.
most definitely do more than just perform music for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. What I try to do, anything I do, I try to do the best I can. It may not mean I'm the best at it, but I'll find out all the little idiosyncrasies and ways to manipulate stuff to make a little more capital or make a bigger dent, whatever I want to do.
And one thing I do want to ask you, Mix-a-Lot, is like taking you back to the very beginning. Like, what made you decide to get into the music industry?
Really, it's funny. I never really decided to get in the industry, but I decided to do music, right? So I decided, I really want to do this. I said, let me get at it and see what it feels like. And so, long story short, man, fast forward to now, here I am. I made a decision when I was watching. There was a group called Kraftwerk. And Kraftwerk was on MTV, and I remember seeing them doing music with no instruments. That was the first time I saw drum machines, synthesizers. I didn't realize that they had actually made them. They weren't even manufactured. They made them themselves. But I studied that, and I decided to, give me a couple of jobs at the time. I was working 2 jobs and started purchasing drum machines and stuff like that, and started recording. I was living in the projects, and I made my first couple of songs in my bedroom in the projects, that I gave them to a friend of mine named Nasty Mess. He was on 450K Fox back in the day, and he put a couple of them on the radio station. They did good, and next thing I knew, we were sitting down in some restaurant in Chinatown, and we decided to try a record label. That's how it happened.
And also, around the same time as well, you also, this was around like early 80 criteria, I believe. And I remember you were actually, I read about that you were actually playing weekends regularly at the Vista Boys and Girls Club in South Seattle. I have to ask you, what was it like actually like playing their weekends, Like were there good turnouts and whatnot?
Yeah. I played 2. I played the Vista Boys and Girls Club out in the Greater Vista, and the one I played the most was the one on 19th and Spruce in the Central area in Seattle. So I would do them every weekend. I'd do one on Friday and one on Saturday. And, it was kind of rough because I had an old 69 Buick where the heat didn't work, so I put my turntables in the back of it. I couldn't afford Technics 1200s, right? So I took some regular belt-driven turntables, and I took wax paper, with the pad over the top of the wax paper so I could still scratch, but I had to give a little shove on the push-out, But it worked, man, and we set up, and I take where the Mix-a-Lot name came from was really me I didn't have a name yet. And I would just DJ in cuts, and like if I played like old school Freakazoid or something like that, I would redo the song and mix that with the original live, right? So I'd start programming on one side of the fader, and once the beat kind of programmed, like I'd mix it in with the turntables. So people would hear the song, and they were like, "Wait a minute, the guitar is gone." They wouldn't know what I did, and that's where the whole Mix-a-Lot tag came from. Because I wouldn't just mix 2 turntables. I had 2 turntables, synthesizers, drum machines, all kind of stuff.
And you know what? That's pure magic, because I guarantee you back in those days, nobody was even doing that. You probably most definitely are one of the first and probably the only individuals to actually DJ like that.
But the only person I know that might have been doing it, although I didn't see him live then, was Egyptian Lover. Egyptian Lover was pretty creative like that, too. He had 2 808s on stage. I couldn't afford the 808, though. I was too poor for that, so I did what I could.
Yeah, Egyptian Lover is most definitely phenomenal on the 1s and 2s for sure.
Yeah, that was my guy, man. He was kind of like on the West Coast, for us. He was really it. That was the first rapper I ever heard of coming off the West Coast. Period. It was the Egyptian Lover.
And also around the same time in '83, yourself, Nasty Nez, and Ed Locke actually formed Nasty Mix record label. I have to ask you, tell us a story behind that record label, and what made all 3 of you guys actually form that?
Well, it's kind of like I said, Ness was the one that played my stuff on the radio first. Before I even really got. We didn't even talk about a label. I had met Ness. He came into one of my performances, I guess I could call it, at the Boys and Girls Club in Central area. He came in, and I was like intimidated. But when you're intimidated, you try to act like you're tough, right? I was really intimidated because he was like, he was the big shot. He was the cat that get out of do cuts from New York and all that and play them. And we hooked up. We started playing stuff on the radio, and then we ended up meeting with Ed. And the person that gets left out of this equation, which is very frustrating, is a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine named Greg Jones. Greg Jones was the one that actually funded Nasty Mix Records. He was the one that actually spent the money and took the chance on it. He was a quiet guy, and Ed Locke put it all together, man, and we decided to make records. And who knew that first album was going to go platinum? Who thought that? That was crazy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that record, man. The record was titled Swass. I have to ask you, what's the inspiration behind that amazing record? And, of course, how does it feel to have your debut record go platinum 2 years after? Because that's phenomenal.
Well, it's kind of weird. I didn't even, honestly, when we did Swass, I didn't even know what platinum meant. I mean, I'm serious. I'm not trying to play, corn pone here. I'm being honest. I didn't know what platinum was. I didn't know there was a million records, right? So I had done a song called Square Dance Forever, which is a silly little song. I didn't even use my voice on it. I used my voice, but I sped it out to sound crazy and stuff, do something funny. And I used to mix it with a Prince song. But I actually got serious after Square Dance Forever. People said, you should make a whole album. And so we tracked Posse on Broadway, which ended up being the big hit off of that record, and a bunch of other songs. But I didn't have a compressor. I didn't have a big studio. I didn't have anything. And we put it out, and I remember when Ed told us, hey, we're at 50,000 units. I'm like, 50,000? What do you mean by units? We have 50,000 records. I'm like, what? I thought that was gold, right? And, before we knew it, Fab Five Freddy from Yo MTV Raps came to Seattle, and interviewed us, and wham, that's when it took off. Yeah, I never will forget the feeling. We didn't have the money yet, because when you do the independent scene, back in that day, it's really hard to get the money out of distributors unless you're dangling another product in front of them. So I had to start creating seminars just to get the Swass money. That's the way it was back then.
And one thing I do want to ask you, as we already know, it went platinum back in I believe that would probably be 1990 area, but since now, that hasn't hit platinum anymore. Has it platinum times 2 or 3 since the 90s.
I don't know. I know the album came out in '88. It actually was platinum in '89.
Oh shit.
And then right into '90, and then I put out Seminar, and that went gold. It went gold pretty quick, and it wasn't. I thought people think it's just momentum. Oh, my Hoopty and Beepers, those were pretty big songs. I got a lot of radio play and stuff like that. So we rode the momentum, but that record going platinum, obviously the label had to be funded, stuff like that, with a lot of that money. But we didn't realize what we were doing. I mean, we were probably, I don't know if we were the first independent hip-hop label to have a platinum, because, you had Macola Records with a lot of the early Egyptian Lover stuff, and some of the early, before they were NWA, the CIA and all that. But I think we were one of the first, if not the first, to go platinum on independent. And Too Short, too. Yeah, Too Short also. He might have gone platinum also.
And also, in 1990, Nasty Mix Records actually signed the ECP, Seattle-based hip-hop, the Emerald City Posse. I have to ask you, how did you guys get connected with, Kid Sensation, Mahara? How did you guys get connected?
Well, Kid Sensation, when I lived in the Lakeshore Village, out of South, and when I started DJing, Kid Sensation was about 15 years old. So he started, helping me to load up my stuff. We'd load up the old Buick and drive across town, do these shows and stuff. And then he just gravitated to it. I mean, the dude, he just made a song the other day called West Coast. Oh my God. I'm like, this dude still got skills. And he really started to really hone his craft while we were hanging out. And then when Maharaji, same thing. Maharaji came to one of those boys club parties. He was from San Diego, he had a different flavor, and he could dance like crazy, and he did these like crazy. He probably made up hyphy, in my opinion. I think he did. But he joined the group, and it was me, Maharaji, Kid Sensation, Nasty Mess, and Larry, like they called him Larry the White Guy. We started touring, started making money at this stuff, man. show where you had to set up in an alley in 100 degrees, your records would melt, stuff like that. But it was a start.
Hey, everybody has to start somewhere, and I do got to say, ECP is a phenomenal group. You know, I still most definitely spin your guys' records today, man. You don't get hip hop like that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, but it's all phases. It's all phases. I mean, you'll hear one style of hip hop, you go, boy, this is not what I like, and boom, it goes to something else, and everybody looks back at that other one and says, boy, that was great. You know how that works. But no, it was. We didn't have a style. We didn't even think about it. But being from Seattle, most people think that was a negative, but that was probably a positive, because if we tried to talk with New York accents or front like gangsters from L.A., that wouldn't have worked either, right? So we just had to be us. And it ended up being some kind of quirky, strange brand of hip-hop.
And in 1992, I gotta say, like, I gotta say first and foremost, Mix-a-Lot, you probably get asked this a million times. So I do want to say my apologies for being the 100 millionth person to ask this. But in 92, you actually dropped the song Baby Got Back, which actually peaked at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. I have to ask you, what was the inspiration behind that song? And of course, like, can you tell us the story behind it? Like, how did that song come to be? Because that's probably one of hip-hop's most famous songs of all time. I'm gonna be honest with you, Mix-a-Lot. I know every single word to that song. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'll say this. The thing about Baby Got Back that's interesting is that initially it was a serious song. It was slower. It was slow, about the speed of my hoopty, about 100 BPMs, and it was a deep, dark kind of song. And it didn't work. The song was not ever about butts. It just sounds like it. But if you listen and read between the lines, you can actually see what I'm talking about. What was going on at that time is there was a silent racism in Hollywood. And what they did is anytime they would cast a woman of color for a part, either she had to assimilate to another culture or she had to look like it. One of the two, right? Or you play a maid or a streetwise prostitute that helped out the cops on Law and Order, stuff like that. And I really got tired of seeing that. I was like, wow, why is it that you have to assimilate to something else to be seen as someone? And I made up my mind that I was going to kind of do a song, a wink, wink, nod, nod song basically about African-American women. And that's what I did. And it ended up blowing up. And then by the time Cosmo got the message, or MTV got the message, whoever it was, they banned the song. And they say they didn't ban it. They relegated it to, after 9 o'clock. Call it what you want. I appreciate them playing it, but when they banned it, it got even bigger. And that was probably the best thing that happened to that song. The day it was bumped down to 9 o'clock.
And what I gotta say to that is that's kind of weird though. You know what I mean? Because everybody thought it was about butts, but then when they actually got the legit message, they banned it. I don't get that. You know what I mean? Normally it should be the sexual innuendo part of things that really make it get banned. But I don't know. It's weird how the media works sometimes. But when we're on the topic of MTV, I'd also won the 1993 Grammy Award for Best Rap Solo Performance. I have to ask you, even though MTV was the ones that banned it from after 9 p.m., but I have to ask you, what was it like actually being up there and actually receiving a Grammy so early in your career?
It was scary. I mean, it was surreal. I was a little bit surprised, and a little bit. I don't know. I still haven't got over it. I mean, I'm looking at my Grammy right now, and I'm like, damn, I got a Grammy from way up here. And it was a beautiful thing. But at the same time, I never had illusions of grandeur. One thing I learned about going #1, there is no #0. So you almost have to plan on not being #1. You have to actually be real with yourself and realize, okay, it's not like if I farted in 10 minutes, that's going to go #1. Well, I have to understand that, hey, now there's nowhere to go but down. And when you go down, the road is bumpy, meaning people will try to, knock you at that time. Oh, he must be going broke. That's been told to me for 30 years now. I still ain't broke.
Hey, well, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I think, that song you're most definitely going to be eating off it the rest of your life, but that's a good thing, though. You know what I mean? It's always good when you can do something you love and it can feed your family.
Oh, yeah. People crack me up when they say, man, first of all, a one-hit wonder is not a person that had, a quadruple platinum album. I don't know how big that thing is now. A couple of platinum singles and another platinum album and a gold album. That's not one-hit wonder. You know what I mean? And sometimes people don't understand it, but I've learned not to. I don't really like to bitch about it because when people complain about stuff like that, I think you acknowledge haters. So I kind of leave that alone and just keep it pushing because I have a lot of ways of monetizing things that I've done in my career. So I've learned to be creative with it.
I'm gonna be honest with you. You're far from a one-hit wonder because even more songs of yours other than "Baby Got Back" has been featured on television, movies. You know, like I don't. People just. I think people want to be you. Mix-a-Lot. I really do think that because I'm just saying. You know what I mean? If they're calling you that, they most definitely want to be you because you know
Oh,
what I
it's
mean.
on.
You made one of
I
the.
mean,
You
I
made
love it. I used to feed off of it, and the thing that people get surprised with, like I give you an example. Nas's people called me. This is a few years back, and they were doing this. He'd done this. Nas had done this song called "Where Are They Now." So they did an East Coast version and a West Coast version. So I get a call. I think it was Battle Cat down in L.A. called me and asked me to be on the song. So I think they thought I was just going to rap like Posse on Broadway or whatever. So I did the first two lines like Posse, and then I took off and ran with it. And I was reading the comments, and you could see people going, "Damn, Mix-a-Lot can spit like that? Whoa!" Because really, the Posse on Broadway thing, I did that back in '87, and then, Baby Got Back is real simplistic rap intentionally because I wanted people to hear what I was saying. But they thought that was all I could do, so it was kind of fun to do stuff like that. When I'm challenged to do it, it's even more fun to me to shock people.
And also, in 1996, you actually worked with a band called Presidents of the United States of America. They were under the group name Subset that actually had a
Yeah.
combination of rock and rap music. I have to ask you, what was it like working with them? And was it like difficult actually working with a group that was sort of like, I think they were more like the Limp Bizkit side of things, but this was like mid '90s, way before Limp Bizkit even made their appearance. So like, was it really
Yeah.
difficult working with a group like that?
Yeah, no, this group they weren't rappers and I wasn't a rocker, right? So what was cool about it is that, they had their success, I had my success. They won Grammys, I won Grammys, By that time grunge was huge. Grunge was dominating everything, right? So we just decided let's do a record where each song had to be about something. Right? So we did a bunch of songs and I mean some serious stuff, some fun stuff, it was all over the place and we never released a record, and I always say the reason we didn't release it because there were too many millionaires in one room. Nobody was hungry, and I don't know that that's true, but that's what it felt like. I mean, myself included. I'm not trying to knock them. I mean, even myself. There were too many reasons not to do it, I think, which was kind of stupid in retrospect. But we put that record together, and we actually toured on it. Never released it. We toured on it, but the rumors of it, and people had found bootleg copies of it, we were filling up most of the places with people who had got the record through bootleg. This is kind of before, you can jump up on your phone and snatch something. Napster wasn't even, it was born, but it wasn't big yet. So it was pretty interesting how we toured on a record that wasn't even released. Didn't even have a title for the album.
That's actually really cool, though. You know what I mean? It's not every day that happens, but it sounded like it worked out well for both of you guys.
Yeah, it did. I mean, and those guys were fun to work with, man. Real organic. The vibe was, and the subject matter of the songs. I got to explore and do some things I've been wanting to do forever, and it was cool. It was cool. I don't fancy myself a genius, but I'm well versed on a lot of things. Everything really, and it's really difficult as an artist to spread your wings in that way because some people really don't want to hear it or can't even comprehend you saying it.
And also, jumping ahead a little bit, I've also noticed that aside from the music part of things, you also did some work in cartoons as well. You were on two of Adult Swim's television shows, Tom Goes to the Mayor, and of course, the famous Robot Chicken. I have to ask you, what was it like actually being a part of Robot Chicken and just being around the crew with Seth Green and all?
I wasn't really around them. This was, when you do those things and this is the advantage of having a studio at home, and not a cheesy studio, but a full blown studio. Is that they tell you what they want, and you can literally do it and fire it back to them on the internet, and they got it. You're done. So that's kind of what I was doing. I would listen to the dialogue. I'd look at the EQ curve based on what I saw in their dialogue, and I would mimic that EQ curve so it didn't sound, out of pocket. And I'd slip it back to them, and next thing you know, I mean, literally, they had it on in less than 10 days. I'm like, wow, the turnaround was super quick. And I've done a lot of that, worked with a lot of brands, you know, Pepsi and, you know, a lot of the 7-Up stuff I've done, and Target. I've worked with so many brands, it's insane, you know.
And you don't me asking, was that the same thing that you did for BoJack Horseman? I think you were in season 4, I believe, of that show. Like, was that the same thing you did? You just did it in your own studio and shot back the audio to them?
Yeah, yeah, you do it in your own studio. You talk to them on the phone, and they tell you exactly how they want the dialogue. And I usually send them 4 or 5 different variations, you know, with different inflections in my voice, and raising my voice, lowering my voice, mumbling, all kind of stuff, and then they pick what they want. Tell you the truth, there's a part of me that's curious about doing that actually as primary, but then I'd probably be sitting in the studio so long I'd hate being here to make music. That's the problem.
Most definitely, especially when like you've been doing it for so many years, the music side of things, right? I think
Right.
I think if you do a couple voiceovers, you'd be like, you know what, I need to make some music.
Exactly. Exactly. I love. You know, what's funny is you find yourself questioning yourself later on in your career. Is did I do this for money, or did I do it because I love it? And I've made probably 20 songs in the last 2 years. Never released them. I just did them because I love producing music. So I got a young cat named TNT. I'm going to produce his record and have fun with it because he's hungry, he's young, he reminds me of a younger me, and he's ready to do it. So it'll be fun for me to produce and kind of give him a little guidance, and especially one thing I think that all artists need to pick up on now, because now you're a walking, talking business. You are no longer working for a record label, so you really need to have a little fiscal literacy, or else you could go broke real quick.
And speaking on the producing side of things, in 2013, you actually produced the album titled "Dream" for the urban rock band, Aaron Jones. I have to ask you, how did you get connected with them? And of course, what was it like actually producing a rock band record?
That was a lot of fun. There was one little issue with that project where somebody called the mastering lab and told them to EQ it differently, so the guitar got louder, and that made my mixes sound really bad. But other than that, I had a ball. I mean, it was. We did some of it here at my house because I have a V drum set, and then we did some at a studio out north, and let them track the drums the old-fashioned way just to see the difference. And we used a little bit of both. It was a pretty fun record. I just talked to Aaron a few days ago. He's got a big deal now. He's recording with a bigger label and stuff like that. So hopefully that succeeds for him.
And also in 2014, normally I don't bring up this individual, but Nicki Minaj actually released the single "Anaconda" that actually featured samples from "Baby Got Back." I have to ask you, when you heard that, how did you feel about like her twist upon her twist with the music?
You know, I didn't bother. It didn't bother me at all. She called me on the phone. Actually, Ice-T, who I never give credit for that, but actually Ice-T is the one that hooked me up. He said that they were looking for me, and Ice-T had my number. He said, "Is it cool?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So Ice-T kind of hooked her up with me, and then I talked to her on the phone, and I was impressed. I'll just say that she's not an artist who sits at home and does her nails and waits to be called in. That's not what she does. She actually was in that studio working, grinding. She knew every part she wanted, how she wanted it laid out. It was really interesting because the song was not called Anaconda initially. It had a different title, and then she worked on it a little bit more, and next time I heard it, I was like, ooh-wee, this one's going to sell. And that's when I realized the difference between the record industry then and now, because the way she put that record out made me feel like a dinosaur. She's like, "Hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this thing out Tuesday or whatever day it was, the first of the month, something like that." I said, "Okay, what do you need me to do?" "Nothing. You know, just watch." "Watch what?" So I paid attention to Twitter, and oh my goodness, that's when I realized, again, this is the second time I realized this, record labels are pretty much a thing of the past, because she didn't need a label. She just dropped it herself, pretty much.
And it's also crazy as well with technology nowadays. Like people can have a full-on studio just actually in software on their computer. They don't even need a giant board or anything. They have it all on their computer. It's crazy how just technology advances things.
Oh, and I love it. And, you know, it's funny. I do have a big board, but it's not an analog board. It's a giant control surface. I mean, it's overpriced, $100,000. Please, this thing should cost no more than $10,000, in my opinion. But oh well, it is what it is. But I embrace that technology. I'm not stuck in the past. You ain't gonna walk in here and see some big ass reel-to-reels laying around. I lean forward. I've always leaned forward when it comes to music technology. I was a big fan of Kraftwerk and Gary Newman and all those early new wave groups, stuff like that back in the day when I was a kid, and I'll never stop loving that.
Yeah, I actually saw pictures of your studio there on your Instagram, man. I gotta say, you have a phenomenal indoor studio, man. For a second, until I read the caption, I thought you were actually at a recording studio like somewhere else, and then I read the caption, I was like, damn, I'm like Mix-a-Lot has a setup.
Well, when I bought this house, um, this was a swimming pool. It was a 50-foot swimming pool. I said, man, I don't make money swimming. The first thing I did was I took the whole pool out and made 3 rooms out of it. One is for vocals and drums. The other one is where I spend most of my time as a control room. And the third one is for just strictly electronics because I'm a big electronics fan. I build a lot of RF amplifiers and stuff like that.
And also, speaking of, all sorts within the music industry, as we already talked about, you're a producer, you're a DJ, you're a musician, you know what I mean? But also, you were another type of DJ as well. You were actually a radio DJ that actually hosted the morning show based in Seattle on Hot 103.7 from 2017 to 2019. I have to ask you, what made you decide to get into radio? And of course, how did that come to be for you?
I don't know who was the PD, good friend of mine, and he worked at Q93 back in the day. Now he's doing Hot 103.7, and he asked me, come on in, let's try it. So we did a 2-year contract, and it's I tell you what, man, anybody out there listening to your morning guy, your afternoon guy, you think, they ain't doing nothing, they're just laying around doing songs. Introducing songs. No, they're not. And I had to do my show in many ways. Sometimes I'd go down and do it live. Well, I always did it live. Sometimes I go down there. Sometimes I do it from here. I do it from hotel rooms, all kind of stuff. I had a setup on the road. I had a portable studio, and I'd as long as they had somewhat high speed internet, I could do it from home. Do it from hotels too. So.
And that's what I mean. A lot of people just think you click a button and poof, it's magic. Everything's done for you.
No.
But in radio, it most definitely you have to run a lot of stuff, and you got to make sure the station maintenance as well. You got to make sure your stream doesn't go offline middle of your broadcast.
Yeah, and another thing, you have to. What I had to do, and it's kind of weird. I told Eric, I said, can you send me your voice? This is before I started doing the show. Once I listened to his voice, then I looked at the EQ curve, and I copied that EQ curve on my vocal so that we sounded the same. Because if I sounded bigger or smaller or heavier or louder or brighter or echo and all that crap, people would laugh at it. So it always sounded consistent. I had to use that exact same curve every single day, no matter what system I delivered it on.
And also, yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, I saw a post on your Instagram about a Sir Mix-a-Lot and Will Ferrell collaboration. Can you tell us a bit more about that? And of course, is it available for our listeners to actually rewatch?
If you want to see it, it's kind of weird because what I did is I put it up on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. Probably Facebook and YouTube might be the better place to look at it because you can go more than 1 minute. But there's a vignette of a bunch of videos that show the making of. I literally finished wiring my studio with new equipment. I went to a different system. And then I was sitting there, literally on camera, trying to figure out what do I want to do first. And I got on a lawnmower, jumped in my Lamborghini, drove around, tried to pick the ideas for a song, and I came up with it and produced it and did it all right on camera. So it's broken up into, I think it's 7 or 8 pieces. Pretty cool.
And one thing I do got to ask, when I said Will Ferrell, I know it's probably a dumb question, but is it the actor Will Ferrell?
Yeah.
Oh.
He has this movie. It's a crazy movie called Eurovision, right? So we're trying to figure out what mix we want to do. And for some reason, I was watching Eurovision. I heard this weird, ding dong, and I thought, what the hell is this? Then I listened to the words, and you think Baby Got Back might be there. Yeah, you might want to listen to the lyrics in that song. My love for you is growing wide and long. I just said, you know what? I'm gonna touch this up. So I created a verse and started messing with it. And I talked to one of the producers, Savon. He's really cool. And I got their blessing. Arista sent me some stems, and boom, knocked it out.
Yeah, Will Ferrell is actually one of my favorite actors. You can just tell, like, if you're actually alone in a room with that guy, he'll most definitely make you piss yourself.
Yeah, he was hilarious. He's a cool dude. I'm trying to get on his his podcast. I don't know. We're trying now. We got a mutual friend, and trying to see if I can get on there with him.
Hey, well, I know it's a long shot, but Will Ferrell, if you happen to listen to this, make it happen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I gotta ask you, Mix-a-Lot, what's next for you? Like, other than like what we all talked about, is there anything else I happen to miss that you actually want to promote while we still have you live on the air with our audience?
Well, other than producing TNT, which I am going to do, but that's not ready yet. I made up my mind the other day. I was on a podcast yesterday, and he was asking me questions about studio gear, stuff that usually people don't ask me about. What I use to do this, what I use to do that, and he really pushed me towards like maybe doing a podcast, like a video podcast. I have the camera gear. You know, I've turned into a camera nerd also. I got a bunch of Blackmagic 6K cameras and all kind of lenses, lights, and all that stuff. So I may do some kind of a video-based podcast. I'm not going to be able to do them every day like some people. I might have got time, but I may do it because if people are interested in it, I'm not going to get on there and do renditions of Baby Got Back over and over because that gets tired. But when people see how you really live and how you really produce, and maybe they can learn something about the business, which is something I talk about quite often. I think more kids out here need to understand you don't need record labels. You are the label. You're driving everything, so you really have to understand how to deal with publishing and royalties and to pay out your artists. Because a lot of people get the money and then they don't pay the artists and they get sued because they don't know how to run a label yet. So they need to learn that stuff. And I love talking about it if they're interested in hearing it.
And one thing I do want to ask you right quickly, just before we wrap things up, when you said earlier on in the interview they have about like 20 unreleased songs, I was wondering, do you have an idea when you're actually going to release those to the general public so people can take a listen and purchase them?
Well, I wasn't going to release them ever, but then after I did this thing with the Yaya Ding Dong thing, I realized that's a new way to release music, to actually show yourself thinking of the idea and literally producing it live. Just have little vignettes. Now live, it takes me 30 hours. They get bored sitting there that long. But, I just turn on the camera whenever I'm doing something, it's semi-important for the song and then release them that way as opposed to, I don't have the juice of a Drake where I can just, do a video on my phone and say tomorrow it's coming out and break TikTok. I ain't that big yet.
But also, this is the time in the interview Mix-a-Lot that I give a chance for the individual that slides into the radio station airwaves, just a chance to give shoutouts to whomever they want to give shoutouts to, and also your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and stay updated on everything Mix-a-Lot, which I hope they are following you because you are the legendary Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Yeah, from time to time, you can catch me at, just look up Sir Mix-a-Lot on YouTube. There I am. You look up The Real Sir Mix-a-Lot on Instagram. Somebody swipe me from the name. You know how that goes. They probably got that the day Instagram started. And then look up Sir Mix-a-Lot on Facebook. You can get me there, and Twitter, obviously. Sir Mix-a-Lot, you'll find me. And I do get back. When people holler at me, I usually comment. I usually get back, unless I don't have time. But I put up videos, and so people can say this sounds like garbage. Okay, well then, cool, man. Thanks for listening. I'll just move on to the next cat. But I have fun with it. I still have fun doing this in this business, and I'm going to stick with it. And as far as shout-outs, let me give a shout-out to any fan of mine because I got my favorite rappers, but they're probably not listening to me right now. I'm going to give a shout-out to any fan of mine, and you will find out the more you get engaged with me, I will. It will be reciprocal. I will answer. That's how I am.
And I do want to say quickly, Mix-a-Lot, thank you so much for taking the time of your busy evening to come on 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM. Truthfully, like I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I've been a huge fan of your music for a long time, so just thank you so much for the years upon years of entertainment that you gave not only the fans, but everybody worldwide. So thank you so much, and I hope down the line we can make this happen again. But for now, most definitely stay safe out there in California, and I'm looking forward to hearing some new music.
Man, I wish I was in California. No, I don't actually right now. I'm in Seattle, brother. I'm still in Seatown. I ain't never moved to California. No. But loving it, man. And 97.7 is popping. When I get out there, hopefully I can start touring again next year. I'm part of a fund right now. We're raising some money to try to keep the venues open in Seattle, the small venues, because they're kind of hurting right now because of the COVID thing. But if we get back on tour, we will hook up again, man. Get you on stage.
Hey, man, most definitely, I most definitely will enjoy that, Thank you so much, Mix-a-Lot, and I look forward to doing this again, and hopefully I can come see a Sir Mix-a-Lot show out here in Canada sometime.
Right on, man. That'd be beautiful, man.
Most definitely. Have yourself a great night.
All right, you do the same.